Okay, so finally we found David. We didn't file a missing in action for you, David.
No, that's good.
Um,
I've been here.
David's our last guest today, and he's from Special Operations Forces Studios. That sounds brilliant. And his project is HHour World Elite, and they have 17 days left in their campaign. They need around $130,000 more to reach the funding goal. That's ambitious. It might be a challenge to reach that funding goal, but of course, still possible. And maybe you've heard part of the show. We had two projects on the show that had last minute funding, sort of, so 30% on the last day and stuff like that. So nobody knows how this whole Kickstarter mechanics really work. So how do you feel about it? Are you nervous?
Well, yeah, a little bit, of course. We worked on the campaign for a month and a half before we launched, and I thought, well, the hard part's done, and it wasn't done. I mean, it was just an incredible roller coaster ride. I mean, almost no one knew about us in the beginning, and then a whole lot of people figured out we were there, so we had a huge surge. And then things died down for a few days, and I started to get really worried. But then, we had a great weekend last weekend, and we've had steady pledging ever since. So as more people discover it, they're seeing that we've got a healthy amount in the bank, so to speak,
Right.
and more people are hearing about it all the time. Plus, we're working on getting additional press coverage, like the show, for example,
Right.
and it all helps. Plus, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of legwork in terms of winning over the old fan base.
Right.
The diehard fans, are a little bit mistrustful sometimes about people who promise the same
Of course.
experience in a modern era.
Right.
But hey, I'm living that dream 18 hours a day or more, and have been for many months now. So. I think that people, as they go through our site and watch the videos and see the coverage, they'll start to believe too.
Right. Maybe you can bring up your kick track chart. I'm prepared, Uh, maybe. So if it comes
Excellent.
up. Because there's an interesting spike on the 9th and the 10th. Do you know what special event was driving these?
I have my suspicions. Like you said before, no one really seems to understand how Kickstarter actually works. It's kind
Right.
of diabolical, so you can work really hard
Yeah.
and things you think are going to have a huge effect, nobody notices. And then something ridiculous can happen. In
Mm.
this case, I had done an AMA on Reddit,
Hmm.
and I think I typed like 30 pages of responses and answered almost every question
Right.
that fans or potential backers had.
Hmm.
So that's part of it. But the real reason is at around the same time, people started discovering that we were there. And I have to say that the fan response has been overwhelming, and those guys are just crazy, insanely enthusiastic.
Right.
They mobilized immediately right around that weekend, and ever since have been evangelizing HHour everywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because I heard from some other project owner whose project is already funded that one of the biggest things for him was Reddit. But he said it's a challenge not to be kicked out by the mods. So you have to be careful and cautious of what you say there. So you have to really deliver some content that is interesting to their community, right?
Yeah, apparently, I didn't get kicked out. After about 5 hours, I was hoping they would kick me out because I couldn't feel my fingers anymore from all the typing. But no, I think I spent about 6.5 hours in that forum, and I believe people got the information they wanted, so it was awesome.
Okay, great. So you were referring to the fan base. So I guess you were talking about SOCOM. Can you fill us in what that series is all about, or what's the history of it?
Yeah, a little over 10 years ago, I think we started working. When I was at Zipper Interactive, we started working with Sony, Computer Entertainment of America, to make a tactical military shooter that honored the tradition of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Um, so that's what we did, and I was the creative director and primary designer on the first two games, and then went on to be the creative director for the studio. So I was overseeing a lot of work.
Hmm.
Um, but that was the first, I believe that was the first broadband shooter for the PlayStation 2. So it was kind of a, experimental time. We were trying new things that we didn't know would work, but we believed would work. And we were really lucky because the fans embraced it and it sold really well. And we created an experience that people are still talking about today.
Okay. So it was sort of a first approach of a shooter in the living room, so to speak.
It was, and this was so new that when I proposed that we use both analog sticks to control movement and camera orientation simultaneously,
Hmm.
um, people were skeptical that it would work. I mean, the initial design called for, single axis movement at a time. And I was like, wow, no, I think people are smarter than that. And, they're totally going to get used to it. And of course, every shooter since then, and at about the same time, adopted that kind of control approach.
Hmm.
So, but it was a crazy, like I said, experimental time. And, we did a lot of things first.
Okay. So when year was that released?
Wow, I do not remember. The 2000s, early
Ball,
2000s,
ballpark.
early 2000s, the
Okay.
2002 maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Long
And it was
time
a
ago.
Sony title,
It was for
Sony Digital
SCEA.
Publishing.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So for their own console, and yeah, that gives you a push for a title, I guess. So let's talk about your new project. I have uh, looked at the Kickstarter video and I found it quite entertaining.
Oh,
So I
thank you.
recommended I recommended to watch it after the show, not now. We've got a bit more to talk about. So describe your new project in a nutshell, and maybe you should bring up some of those images that you sent me. People might get bored of seeing me.
Oh, I doubt that. I mean, it's like you're the spirit of Germany, right?
Thank you. So, Bastian, can we have those full screen? Oh, they are. Okay.
Okay. So HHour World's Elite is the spiritual successor to SOCOM. And what that means is we're trying to recreate that magical balance between tactical team-based gameplay in a shooter and some of the crazier moments, the run and gun gameplay that people really loved about the original series. And at the same time, we're going to fix some of the flaws that the fan community has, complained about over the years. And I treat that really seriously because when I was, working for Zipper and Sony, I really couldn't engage with the community at all. But times have really changed. So now that's what I can be all about. And just like we're crowdsourcing, the funding for our demo, we're sort of crowdsourcing some of the design out to the community because, people, well, I often say that I can recognize a great idea when I see it. And
Right.
we've got thousands of really smart gamers who are making their opinions known. And I can be very, very engaged and ask them specifically, to detail their responses and what motivated, their expression of desire for a particular feature or content. So what HHour is kind of like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket. If you remember SOCOM 1 and SOCOM 2, it's going to feel much the same. We're
Hmm.
fixing some of the known problems that people have complained about, but we're also updating and modernizing it. So people are going to get an HD AAA experience, AAA production values for sure, which they've also been asking for a really long time. Um, and we're also introducing the concept and the technology of analytics, which basically analyzes player behaviors as an individual and a team to encourage people and instruct them on how to go from being a noob to good player and how good players can go from good to great. All this plus expanded and enhanced community tools and clan management and creation tools. So
that will be single player and online multiplayer, or what's the plan?
Absolutely. Initially, because we are independent, and I don't want to ask the community or a publisher or a venture capitalist for enough money up front to make a AAA game that includes a solo campaign and all of the expansion packs that we're going to roll out over the course of a year for multiplayer, because that would mean giving up a lot of our independence and creative control. So initially, we're rolling out multiplayer with a minimum of 6 maps, multiple game modes that will be familiar to players of SOCOM. And 3 months after that, we're releasing our first DLC for multiplayer. So it'll be maps, character customization options, and new weapons. And just to be clear, everyone will always get the new weapons that we release for free, because we don't want an unfair advantage in our world.
Yeah, I kind of hate that. That's very common in this free-to-play world, that you just pay for victory. And that's not my type of gaming, really, No,
I don't think, I'm not sure whose type it is. We're not going to be releasing, customizable pink pistols. Hello Kitty pink pistols, with 100 caliber rounds that, fire 60 rounds a second, just because we can charge $5 for that. That's not what we're about. We'd rather
take Angry Birds pistols. They are more expensive.
Really? Awesome. Yeah, and we're not doing a cross promotion with Angry Birds either. This is pretty serious. It's an authentic military experience, and I should mention that because the founder of the company is retired Special Forces, and these guys are in our offices and on our team. So I'm really immersed in that culture, which helps me a lot in terms of making it an authentic experience.
Right. So you'll not do Angry Seals for iOS then?
I don't think so. Although,
but you would have the seals around to do it, right?
Yes, actually, SEALs and other special forces groups. So who knows? Maybe we'll get to do a super deformed, crazy anime style iOS game at some point. But our emphasis first is to bring back, the classic gameplay of the SOCOM shooter experience.
Yeah, we're looking at tons of polygons, so you will have a challenge on a tablet.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, you have to set your expectations a little bit lower for the renderer, right?
I saw that your target platforms are PC and PS4. Typically, most projects target PC, Mac, Linux because they're based on Unity. What engine are you using?
I would love to tell you, and I get this question all the time, and it's pretty much the only question I cannot answer publicly right now.
Okay.
We haven't secured the license yet, but it's an engine, everybody's familiar with it. A lot of blockbuster titles have shipped with it, and it does what we need. It's got a really strong renderer, and it's easily adaptable to our needs through specialty programming. However, if I say publicly that this is what we intend to use, then the licensor knows, and they'll be like, twice as much for you. Right?
I understand NDAs, yeah. Have you considered supporting Oculus Rift?
Kind of. I think my ideal application for Oculus Rift has already shipped, and it's the guillotine simulator. Yeah, I mean, we're certainly open to that. I mean, when I was making SOCOM, it was all about embracing new technologies like speech recognition and the broadband adapter and that kind of stuff. So we're totally open to that kind of, hardware option. So we may be asking them to send us, test kits or development kits or development hardware. Or maybe they see this and they just send it to us because we'd love to try it out.
Well, I've shown an Oculus Rift on the show, so they can't complain. They got their free advertising already. I just find it interesting technology, and your game seems to be a match for what they are doing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I like the project, and it's certainly a serious AAA game, or can be if you get your funding sorted.
Yep.
So I wish you well,
Thank you.
and hope you make it. I told everybody we are going to cut each project into a separate YouTube video and upload it. So that would be available for people who are not in the right time zone or have to work now.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there's no ideal time for a worldwide show. I had to take the guy from India to the first part of the show because it was already 11:30 p.m. for him.
Right on.
So he might be in bed by now.
Well, I think it's a great time for a trans global show. I mean, because the time is now, right?
Yeah.
And people are going to see it whenever they want when they watch the YouTube version. So awesome! Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us and making the time for it. And hopefully we can see a nice backing statistics tomorrow on
Yeah,
your
I hope
project
so.
too.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for joining us, David. And we'll be in touch.
Okay, talk to you later.
Talk to you
Bye.
later. Bye.